It's a bird. It's a plane. Nope, it's just another wrong idea. In case you're unfamiliar, being wrong is about embracing subjective experience over objective truth. We're not interested in being correct, we just want to explore our own insights and opinions. I'm Lucas, joined by my brother Jack, who's going to give us a little taste of what we're in for today.
Well, now that we're hopping back on the horse again, we're gearing up for our next deep dive right now. We are looking at some things which we think might be helpful for you guys to keep in mind before we dig into this next deep dive. And I had a little bit of a oogly boogly mind moment one time, and I'm like, people suck at managing their time. Because I was like having a little bit of a moment where I like just couldn't figure out how to delegate my time. So I'm like, you know what? Let me sit down, let me talk with Lucas, and let's figure out why I've got the wrong idea about time management.
That sounds great. I think that many people make the mistake in time management of thinking that it means being as productive as possible all the time. That's the main misconception I've seen.
It's really true because people will just obsess and obsess and obsess about trying to squeeze every last bit of water out of that towel of productivity, and it just ends up meaning that you hurt your hands. Like, you're not going to get any more work done, and if anything, you're just overexerting yourself and really just detracting from the quality of the work that you're able to put out.
Yeah, it's burnout. It's this feeling where you are trying to be so productive that you end up being counterproductive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who will like sit around and just study for hours for a test and then end up getting like an 85. And this actually just happened recently because I had spent like a fair few hours studying for a unit test in my math class, and I got a horrid grade. And then the next test I came in, I probably had only studied for about 30 minutes, if that. Walked in, I got like a 96, and my buddies were like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "I didn't study that much."
So why do you think that is? What do you think the difference was?
Well, I think it was two things. For one, I didn't cloud my brain with too much information, and I sort of just trusted that I knew the concepts because, yeah, I knew the concepts. I didn't need to relearn all of the concepts and then risk clouding my brain with too much information. And two, I made sure that I wasn't, gonna like try and do too much with the time that I had allotted to myself. I'm like, okay, this is a fairly small unit. It's only or a fairly small quiz. It was only on two sections. It was on sort of like velocity, acceleration, jerk motion, so the derivatives of, your first thing, and it was also like chain rule. That was all that was on this quiz. It wasn't very big. So I didn't need to spend like an hour and a half studying for this. There was just a couple of very small things that I needed to look back at because it was from an old section and we'd done a quiz on some stuff in between. So all I did was go back, review, refresh my mind, and then trust what I knew.
Okay, you said a couple of things that I find interesting there. One, though, is that it almost sounds like you're saying that that wouldn't necessarily have worked on the other test because it may not have been as maybe it was on more topics or something. Like, I just want to clarify, are you saying that you think that this technique would have worked on the other test as well or not?
Oh, I think it would have worked almost better on the other test because here's the thing. A lot of the concepts which were on that last quiz were all very interconnected. It was just the fact that when I was studying for them, I tried to learn every sort of like subset of that bigger unit topic as its own thing, rather than sort of just looking at the topic as a whole and thinking about the parts of it and how they all work together. Because realistically, it's not about trying to memorize a formula or think about a concept in a specific way. It's understanding the broader concept and then being able to apply it to the problems which they give you.
Man, I couldn't have scripted that better. That like you went exactly where I want to go with this, which is this notion that when you give yourself only a little bit of time, you sort of force yourself to distill the ideas down into the most important aspects. And that's what's going to give you the ability to actually solve problems more effectively because you're not, I'm going to abuse a term here from machine learning, but you're not overfitting the data. You're not getting so caught up in the details of every individual problem, or like you said, formulas for how to do this specific thing. You're forcing yourself to go, how can I apply this concept in this context?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the one of the front half of the test was literally just looking at a graph of velocity, and it's like, when is the particle speeding up? When is it slowing down? When is the acceleration positive or negative? And it's like, I'm not gonna try and learn all of these like things about positive and negative acceleration. It's like, let me think about this logically. What is velocity? Well, it's just the speed of an object in a given direction. And then it's like, okay, well, if the x-axis means 0 and there's positive and negative stuff, then if I just use a little bit of my brain power, I'm going to figure out all the right answers. It's not about trying to be super specific and over analytical, because then you just risk getting stuff mixed up in your head. Just know what's going on and then use your reasoning skills in your head, and I think you'll be significantly better off.
Okay, so I want to take this one step further, because what you just said makes a lot of sense to me. I am like now remembering my own study strategies when I was in school and how I would deal with this stuff, because I very rarely studied for tests, and if I did, it was only again to remind myself of core concepts. I found that that's just how my brain liked to solve problems. I didn't like to get too deep into the nitty-gritties of how things worked. I like to sort of work out the details from first principles, and that's sometimes good, but it can also cost you more time. So there's like a trade-off between how quickly you can solve the thing and how much you have to memorize. But where I want to go with this is, you described, I'm just going to use the example that you gave me, which is like, what is velocity? Oh, well, it's the speed that something's going in a particular direction. Yes, that's true. But could we even understand something deeper? Velocity truly is change in position over time. And if we understand that, then we can very easily, derive other quantities that are, or we can maybe perhaps think about the problem differently when we're thinking about it as, oh, okay, if I'm given a position graph, I'm asked about velocity. Now it's very easy for me to think about, okay, now let me just look at the difference between the position here and there, and that will tell me something about velocity. So I don't want to get bogged down in this particular detail, but my point is, if you can figure out the underlying concepts, the foundational pieces, you'll be better off, because you have that true understanding or deep intuition for how things work.
I mean, I couldn't have said that more perfectly. Again, not to get too bogged down on the concept, but the back page was literally about like position and like the change in distance over time. So like, yeah, quite literally, because I understand the broad concept, I was able to use it to help me, problem solve all the other things.
So let's get back to specifically time management. I mean, like to remind ourselves like why we're talking about this, because we've been harping on it. Using your time effectively isn't necessarily about spending a lot of time doing it. It's about using the time to get the meat, instead of worrying about all of the tiny little details. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. If you're just sitting there and doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff, then you're just doing yourself harm. You're not going to actually be gaining yourself anything. You're just sort of tuning your mind out to the actual important concepts.
It feels like a false sense of productivity. So like, because I am actively engaged in something that I consider work, I'm being productive. And I feel like that is a fallacy.
Well, 100%. And I think this almost ties into something else here, because my buddies are always like, yo, we're gonna hop on a call tonight and study for a couple hours. Do you want to study with us? And I'm like, yeah, I'll hop on for like 15 minutes. He's like, but don't you need to study the whole unit? I'm like, no, I need a little bit of time and I'm cool. And it's just like, you don't need to say yes to every single thing that comes towards you when you're trying to, like, manage your time, because like, I have other classes, I have other finals that I need to tend to. I also have the wrong idea to tend to. I have edits to do. It's not all about seizing every opportunity that comes towards you and just taking that as, oh, if I miss this opportunity, my life is done for. It couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, being able to just say, I appreciate it, but no, because I need to focus my time elsewhere, is an incredibly, like, effective and crucial skill.
Yeah, that's an important detail there, because I think what you're really getting at is the notion that time management is about prioritization. It's literally a question of, how important is this? How urgent is this? I mean, I guess what you'll hear people talk about is the Eisenhower matrix or whatever they like to use. But I always just think about these things in terms of what actually is going to have the most impact for me. If I spend my time on this, you like to use the term leverage. Like, what's going to give me the most leverage if I spend my time on it?
Exactly. It's figuring out, well, what's most important to you, you know? Like my to-do list that I just created in Notion has like 4 different categories. It's like I've got low stuff, low priority, medium priority, high priority, and urgent. It's like which one of those do I need to get done? I got to get done the urgent stuff first, right? And once the urgent stuff is done, then I can start working my way down.
Well,
It's
I
not.
guess I'm trying to say that there's importance is another dimension there, and that's the whole point of that Eisenhower matrix, is sort of like how do you balance the importance versus the urgency. And I guess, yeah, it's not always about doing the most urgent thing right away, because while it seems urgent, perhaps there's a more important task that could make that urgency, like, could diminish the urgency or eliminate it entirely. If you can find the high leverage or high impact tasks, that's really where you want to be spending your time.
Well, it was interesting that you said that because I was actually gonna quasi tie this into what I was saying without even realizing it because I've never heard of the Eisenhower matrix once in my life. Like you introduced me to this concept just now, and okay, like now I'm sort of getting it. But like the the sort of way that I'm thinking about it is like I had one of my tasks I needed to create a logo for like a friend's podcast, but I had that in urgent because I needed to get it done quickly. But I ended up just being like, I'm not in the space to like create that logo because he had a very specific thing which he wanted to get done, and it just wasn't feeling that my creative juices weren't flowing yet. So I looked down, and I also needed to finish editing something for a friend. So I'm like, okay, well, let me just do that because I feel like I can just get it done. And by the time I was done editing, my creative juices were going, and I ended up making his logo when I got it done. So like I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, and I think I ended up getting that whole thing done in like 45 minutes. But if I would have tried to stick it out with that highly urgent task, it would have taken me 45 minutes just to get that first thing even partially done.
Yeah, that's a good example, because what you're getting at there is that if you had just been determined to get this task done because this is the most urgent thing, I need to get this done, you actually would have wasted more time, so you would have been less productive. And I feel like this is the trap that people get into. I have a friend who loves to talk about optimizing their time and their schedule, and I feel like this is entirely the wrong approach, because if you're constantly thinking about optimizing, usually you're going to go like, oh, okay, how can I make sure that I'm doing something useful all the time? And that's going to get you into this place where it's like, okay, you're constantly spending time doing stuff, but how efficient are you being with the time you're spending on those tasks?
You can't be constantly productive. It's not humanly possible. Like you will burn out. You will lose motivation. And expecting yourself to have constant motivation and energy and attention is just stupidly unrealistic. I get the sort of the sentiment behind like trying to optimize the stuff that you do, but again, like you said, I prefer the word leverage. How can you leverage what you're doing? Maybe you know that you're really productive, like me, from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. It's like, okay, let's not try and get the work done from 7 to 9. I'll spend 7 to 9 with friends, family, having dinner, going out, whatever. And then when I get home, after I've had a shower and I've decompressed for a little, and I start my work at 11, from 11 to 2, I'm going to get 6 times the amount of work done I would have done from 7 to 9. So really, it's just about like, it's part of it's about knowing who you are as a worker, but also part of it is just like, don't always go with like what the cliches are telling you.
Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself. I went through phases where like I tried to use techniques for productivity and time management, and it always felt to me like it was actually just adding more stress and confusion to the process. And then I went to kind of the opposite extreme where I realized that if I just work when I feel like I have the motivation to do it, I tend to be highly productive. And when I'm not feeling it, if I just allow myself to take that break, it will actually allow me to come back the next time I have a productivity wave and be even more productive. And although it seems like I end up actually wasting a lot of time being quote unquote unproductive, what ends up happening is I end up being more productive than I would have been if I had just tried to be productive actively that whole time. Now, I'm not saying that you should go to that extreme, because there's probably, for myself, like if I allow myself too much of that break time, I actually will start to lose productivity, because I'm not always motivated to do things. And if you're just going to only work when you're motivated, it could get rough. So I think there's some middle ground there. But I guess the part that I'm trying to stress is the value of the rest, and how it allows you to compound your efficiency when you have those waves.
I've got a word just flashing bright in my head, and it's just like balance. It's like, yeah, balance productivity with rest, because I feel like a lot of times people will like connect rest with being counterproductive. And realistically, it's pretty hard to be counterproductive unless, like you said, you are literally just losing overall productivity because you're not getting any work done. Like, of course, there are times you need to work and you need to get things done when you're not motivated. Like, if I worked out only when I felt like working out, I'd probably be pretty tiny. But, like, then again, taking rests, taking breaks. I'll take a week off here or there because, my body's sore and run down. I'll come back next week. I'm even better than I was the week before. But don't try and overload everything, because you're only so human. You only have so much capability and capacity. So, like, I mean, there's too many examples I could give. They're just all flushing into my brain at once. But, like, if you are able to, maybe find something that helps you relax or decompress, right? Like, maybe it's listening to music, maybe you got a podcast, maybe you got a TV show you're watching or whatever. Like, the goal here is not to, like, do 4 hours of work, then binge season of TV show. Like, no. It's like, you gotta get some work done, then maybe go, like, watch an episode, and then, like, go get some more work done. Like, again, there is nothing wrong with resting and relaxing, because your brain needs it to be good, productive, efficient, and effective. But then again, you can't lose too much time slipping away to the wayside. So, like you said, it's just finding that balance based upon the person that you are.
The main thing that stood out to me is when you're talking about seeing those periods of rest as being unproductive. Like, I think that's really where this whole thing falls apart for most people. I want to take what you're saying to the next step, because you're almost saying, like, oh, it's okay to take those breaks and rest is good. And I agree with that. But what I want to almost emphasize here is that I actually see rest as part of my productivity. I don't see it as a separate thing. It's like, in order to be as productive as I can be, I need to be giving myself rest. It is actually part of the productivity method for me. It's like, if I'm not resting a little bit, I'm hurting my productivity. So I want people to actually think more in terms of incorporate rest into whatever your schedule is, because although it might seem counterintuitive, the energy that you'll get and the ability to focus and get into flow states will be dramatically improved if you're not trying to constantly overwork yourself.
I think the only thing that I would really like to round this off with here is I was literally talking to a friend about this last night, because he's like, we're gonna do something with the boys tomorrow afternoon. And I'm like, all right, cool. You want to come? I'm like, nah. Like, one, I have work to do, and two, I gotta relax a little. He's like, why are you always relaxing? I'm like, okay, think about this. When I'm at school and tired and groggy, how fun am I to be around? He's like, you suck. You're crabby. I'm like, yeah, I know. But when I come out on the weekends and we're having fun and I've had a little time to rest, how pleasant am I to be around? He's like, you're the best. You're funny. I'm like, yeah, that's because I had the time to rest, because I know myself. You, my friend, on the other hand, could go out and have no rest and be fine for freaking days on end. Does it actually work for him on the inside? I don't know, because he probably just doesn't want to admit it. But, like, for me, I know. I need a little bit of time just to, like, myself. Like, I need 1 day a week. That's why I usually don't do anything on Sundays. I just chill. But if I didn't have that day on Sundays to chill, by God, the other 6 days of my week would be like hell. But I know that I basically just need 1 day to just sit and relax and do me, to have 6 fucking great killer days the rest of the week.
I think the important part of that is that no method is going to work for every person. And that's why I've been trying to keep things fairly general so that whatever we're talking about, you can apply for yourself. But you have to understand your preferences. Again, I'm the type of person where like my productivity comes in waves, and I understand that about myself. And if I try to fight that, I end up being less productive. And that's just something I've learned over the years of trying things. So for some people, being very rigid and structured about when and how they work is going to be better for them. And it all depends. But the value that we're trying to deliver here is think in terms of the efficiency of your time, not just are you spending time on something. It's like make sure that time is quality time, because quality time is what's going to get you the benefit. It's not about jamming as much in as you can in a certain amount of time. Just because you're spending that time doesn't mean that it's actually productive time.
It's the cliche. It's quality over quantity. And in this case, it really couldn't be anything more simple than that. If you're looking at your results and you're seeing that they're going down, take a different approach. And if you figure out that you're getting more work done in an hour than you are in 4, you only need an hour a day. Just go take 3 to yourself.
My last thought is that whatever you're trying to go for, I think that people get really caught up in trying to create these powerful productivity systems, and they work in the short term, but they're actually very hard to keep up with. So my advice is to really think about sustainability. When you're thinking about productivity and you're trying to figure out what works for you, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like, that cliche applies perfectly, because you're going to want to be productive for your entire life. And if you try to do too much too fast, you're going to burn yourself out, and you're going to think that the productivity system doesn't work, or you're not doing it right, or whatever it is, when in reality, again, like, this is why I think rest is so important, because it's like that's what makes my productivity cycles sustainable for me. If I don't have those periods where maybe it is like a long chunk of resting time, but as soon as I come back to it, it's like, okay, now I feel really well rested and I'm ready to just like get a bunch of stuff out. It's almost like it actually might be good to force yourself to take a break, even when you feel like you want to be productive, because it forces you to kind of, anticipate, get a lot of stuff ready in your mind that you can then get out quickly when you're ready to do a work session. I mean, for me, it's like, if I know that I want to be productive, it's good to have a couple of things queued up that I know I want to take care of.
I think the only thing I would say is, don't think that taking breaks is just an excuse to go and be lazy and think that you're being productive. You need to make sure that what you are doing really is aiding you. So, again, that's all up to you, and you got to be responsible for your sustainability and your productivity and your use of your time. But I think that it's incredibly important. It's something incredibly overlooked, but that's my only last big closing thought is don't just think that you can go and waste away your time taking breaks and it's really just helping you be more productive. Just be cautious.
In the interest of time management, let's wrap the episode up.
Perfect. If you guys enjoyed this episode, you can find more content just like this at The Wrong Idea on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And until next time, keep being wrong.
Got a thought that challenges the norm? We want to hear it. Post your wrong idea with the hashtag #WrongIdea. That's RONG idea. And join the conversation. Who knows? Your perspective might just be featured in a future episode. Remember, in a world of endless perspectives, all ideas are wrong ideas. Until next time, keep thinking, keep challenging, and keep embracing the unconventional.